welcome to the Ocals channel. Thanks for watching today, and let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy Color game. Today, focus on a game called Wizards and Warriors X, Fortress of Fear for the original Game Boy. Now, I've never played any Wizards and Warriors game before. Evidently, there's 1 and 2 on the NES, then Part X, and then Part 3 on NES, and that's like the entire franchise that's ever done. So the X does not mean 10, it just means, well, X for whatever reason. Probably like Dracula X on the SNES. Maybe it's like the same time period of that where X was like a cool letter to put in the title. That's the only thing that I can figure. But anyway, the Game Boy version here is a little bit of a departure from the other Wizards and Warriors games from what I've read. They had a little bit of RPG elements mixed into the platform adventure, where this is just simply a pure action platforming game with pretty much no RPG elements mixed in at all, except for different items you can find inside of treasure chests. Now, this particular game is extraordinarily difficult. It does have a pretty cool art direction for it, pretty cool animation, but the difficulty here is just overloading. There's an onslaught of enemies throughout almost the entire experience, completely unfair jumps throughout the experience, no continues as well. I'm telling you, if you can get through this game, you are truly a expert player in pretty much every way possible. Now, this particular video did get moved up in our queuing a bit because Lord Gaiac requested I cover it sooner than later. If there's a game that you want to see me cover sooner than later, let me know the name of the game in the comments down below. And just like Wizards and Warriors, I'll move it right on up in the queue. Now, I always like to start the videos off looking at the box art for the game first. And the box art for Fortress of Fear is a pretty classic cover. You have a Conan-looking warrior in the front, a giant serpent off to the side, a skeleton army in the background approaching you, and your sword is literally dripping with green blood here, I assume from the giant serpent here. But anyway, it's a great cover. It just simply doesn't summarize the game super well, because in the game, you are not fighting as this particular hero. Your hero, Kuros, is just a medieval knight, not a Conan or He-Man wannabe. And so the enemies themselves are all in the game. You have the giant serpents in the game, you have the skeleton army, but your character is completely opposite of this particular character. It'd be like if they showed a Mario game and they took a completely different protagonist of like a giant muscle man and put him on the cover. Or I guess a better representation would be like the Mega Man cover on the NES, where you just took a completely different looking protagonist for the game. But anyway, I like the cover, it just simply doesn't summarize the game perfectly. Now, when you start to come up here, you do have the title of the game, like a little intro scene, and then you have a picture of the Fortress of Fear you're going to be infiltrating here, trying to take out the evil Malakil. His story is very weak in the game as far as like giving you a lot of details, but the music that is played in the background here for the intro is absolutely phenomenal in like every single aspect. It's one of the best Game Boy songs I've come across thus far. I'll let a little bit of it play right here. I don't know, there's just something about it like really symbolizes getting ready to go into a medieval fortress, and it fits the game perfectly, and it's also really cool sounding at the same time. Now, when you start the actual game here, you're beginning on the outskirts of the castle, and you're playing as Kuros, who, like I said, looks like a medieval knight in shining armor here, and that's very similar to what he looked like in the first Wizards and Warrior game on the NES. They are keeping the art direction pretty similar to its predecessor, but your attacks are very simple. You have the B button for just press it one time, you have like a little stab attack. If you press the up button and the B button, you have like an overhead attack. If you press the down button, you go into like a crab walk mode, and the animation for the crab walk is pretty darn fantastic here. And you have an attack from your ducking down in your crab walk. And then you obviously have a jump button as well. So the controls are fairly simple, but at the same time, it allows for the precision of exactly where the enemies are attacking you. So it gives you that sense of immersion as, you know, actually fighting a medieval battle here. It's just too bad the enemies are going to come at you at such a fast pace, and so many of them, that the control scheme doesn't really fit with the actual game. Now, also, as far as like poor mechanics, you're going to notice very early on in the game is you have actual fall damage in this game, which is pretty darn ridiculous because you never actually climb like very high up vertically in the level. It's always on the exact same plane here, and if you fall just barely a little bit further than a normal jump here, you get fall damage, and it just seems really, really unfair. There is a way to prevent fall damage later on if you get the boots of jumping, but you can't get that until a little bit later on in the game, and when you die, you lose your boots of jumping. And so, man, I really do hate the idea that they included fall damage in the game. Even when you like fall on like a little fluffy cloud here, you still get fall damage from a cloud jump. And I don't know, there's something about that just seems really unfair. But this is a mechanic they definitely should not have included in the game because it makes no sense and it really just frustrates the player. But let's talk about some of the positives that you're going to notice in the first level as well. That's definitely going to be the art style here. I enjoyed the art direction they're going to have for the medieval knight. I enjoyed the art direction for the enemies. You have like little bats coming at you, little arrows being shot at you from the archers, little fish that are hopping up from the moats trying to chomp you up here. The art direction is pretty great and all the enemy sprites are pretty well done. I even enjoy like when you attack and kill an enemy, it has like a little action word that displays like zap or bam or pow or something like that, like an old Batman television show. I enjoyed the art direction that they're going in, and I feel like it fits the overall style for a fun medieval game here. And it does feel a little bit like a deceit because when you have a cartoony game like this, you sort of assume it's going to be a little bit easier, and this is definitely not going to be an easy game. Now, once you finish up level 1-0, you head into the castle for level 1-1 and 1-2, and this is the only game I've ever encountered that actually has the first level as 1-0. Every other game I've ever played always starts off in 1-1, so there's a very odd choice of numbering that they chose to go with. But anyway, you head into the castle here, you got some new enemies, you have the little serpents that are going to come out of the little holes here, try to gobble you up. You also have some cannonballs flying across the screen from these enormous cannons off to the side. You also have these orc characters that are going to try to attack you. And for the most part, the enemies, you cannot predict them the first time you're going through the level. They are completely a surprise here. But once they are on the screen, they always follow a very telegraphed path here. And you can take them out pretty easily. The entire challenge is just simply knowing when the enemy is going to enter into the actual screen. You also have some pretty ridiculous jumps in this level, or beginning in this level, and just platforms that are like literally outside the field of view. And you can even ride the platforms down below the field of view. It looks like you should die in this hole here, but instead you just sort of go below the, I guess, screen, and you emerge back on top of it, which leads me to like thinking how the game was actually programmed. I feel like this game was programmed with a wider field of view, and they just simply zoomed it in for the Game Boy in order to make the sprites a little bit larger. But when they zoomed it in, it also had the side negative effect of just changing the overall mechanics for the game. Like I mentioned with the hole right here, you can actually see the platform because it's off the screen. You go off the screen. I mentioned earlier the onslaught of enemies that are going to come just at a breakneck pace onto the screen to attack you. If the field of view is a little bit larger, you could actually predict the enemies coming at you and get the precision of exactly how you want to attack them if you're 3 directions. And so I feel like the game was zoomed out, and it would have been a better game if it was zoomed out, but they zoomed it in to make the sprites a little bit larger, a little more animated, probably to pull a little bit more of an audience. And so, I don't know, I feel like the game was changed at some point. I could be wrong, but I feel like the game was zoomed in, and that was a massive mistake for this particular game. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the NES games did have more of an RPG element aspect. This game does not completely abandon it in like all areas. There are treasure chests that you can find throughout the level. If you found keys earlier in the level, you can use those keys to open up the treasure chest, and you can get like small buffs to your characters, like you can get a shield of protection, you get like a little small invisibility cloak maybe for a little bit, you can get a potion to refill your health. And you can also get the jumping boots, or the boots of jumping, which allows you to jump higher and prevent that fall damage. However, when you do approach a chest, you also might end up just getting a gem inside. If you get a gem, it just simply increases your score and does nothing for actual buff of your character. And that is a massive disappointment when you open up a chest and you just simply get points. Because when you're playing this game, you are definitely going to need a boost in some form or fashion to help you get through these levels. And so, like I said earlier, you almost have to play these levels multiple times to understand where the enemies are coming at you, and also to understand like which chest you actually want to open. Now, when you get to 1-3, you're going to get to the very first boss battle in the game, which is a giant bat that tries to attack you. And all of the boss battles are very telegraphed. The bosses do not mix up their attack patterns pretty much at all. And so once you learn their pattern and memorize it, you've got the boss battle pretty much in the bag here. And so you basically just stand on the upper left-hand platform, attack the boss, and when he gets ready to come towards the upper limb, just jump down one level. And then once he's done his business where you were previously at, jump back up there, continue to slice away, and just repeat the pattern over and over and over, jumping between these two platforms. You'll have him taken out in literally no time. Now, once you finish him off, you journey into level 2-0, and you're almost going for like Bowser's castle here, because you have like these little fire bullets or fireballs that are flying across the screen trying to attack you, just like they do in Super Mario Bros. 1 and Super Mario Bros. 3 on the NES. You also have these little spiders that are dropping down from the ceilings, and little slimes that are dropping from the ceilings as well. That's very akin to Legend of Zelda, or Zelda 2, Adventures of Link, and the palaces. But these levels here are going to follow very much of the similar mechanics of the earlier levels. You probably will not finish them the first time going through, and you're going to have multiple playthroughs to actually learn where enemy placement is at. And then you have 2-1, 2-2, and 2-3. And I'm sort of going to group these together because the mechanics are very similar, except for an introduction of some new enemies. You do have the skeleton zombies that are going to start approaching you. You're also going to get these little torches on the wall that shoot out flames that are going to try to attack you as well. And then you're also going to have the skull onslaught that's going to start coming across the screen. at you at the same time. And the skull onslaught truly is an onslaught. The amount of skulls that come at you at one time is pretty darn ridiculous. But at the same time, you just simply have to memorize the level and play through it multiple times to actually get it down pat. Now, 2-4 is going to be the skull boss of sorts. You don't really actually fight the skull boss. All you have to do is like really time just pretty much frame perfect how to jump into his mouth. It probably took me, I'd say 40 tries to try to jump into his mouth and actually figure out the exact timing. I know some people are probably anti-save state, but I see nothing wrong with creating one in order to just simply learn the mechanics of like what the exact frame perfect jump is going to be in order to memorize that particular part of the level. But you know, that's up for people to decide if they want to use a save state or not in order to get that pretty much frame perfect jump down. Now, when you journey into chapter 3, I'm going to call these stages the Dragon Hall stages, because pretty much every stage has these giant dragon statues in the background. Some just sort of sit there, some actually shoot fireballs out at you. You're also going to get pretty much an onslaught of axes for the stage. Some are like a little rotation. Some actually fly across the stage like the fireballs earlier. And this is another one of those stages where you pretty much have to play it multiple times just simply to memorize the placement of every single enemy in order to actually make it through the stage unscathed. And even then, I feel like some of the places you're just simply going to have to basically take a hit in order to continue on through it. There are also multiple stairways that you can go up through. I can't really tell if the stairways actually make a ton of difference as far as like which direction you're going to go in. Most of them felt like they sort of, went to the same conclusion or the same exit, but there may be a difference as far as like, a little bit of exploration in this level. Now, when you get to the boss of stage 3, or boss of chapter 3 here, is going to be a giant skull and a smaller skull. And the smaller skull is what you actually have to kill, and it sort of hops down this little stairway here, has very much, once again, a very telegraphed pattern, and you sort of have to take the skull out. I recommend staying on the far left-hand side. When he gets down to the far left, jump off to the side, wait for him to do his little final move, and he'll repeat the same pattern all over again before you get your hits on, and then you get to go up to the skull mouth and continue on. Now, chapter 4 is going to be a little bit shorter than the other chapters. There are only 3 stages here. The first one we call the claustrophobic marketplace, because it looks like you're in a medieval market. You can't really see the top or the bottom of the screen very well at all. You can't see which enemies are coming at you, and your jumping is also very limited in the area as well. A fairly difficult stage to journey through. 4-1, you're back on the castle walls again, and you get a brand new enemy for the first one in several stages here. There's like a little demon buzzard that's going to come down at you. It may just be a regular buzzard, but it looks like a demon buzzard to me. And then 4-2 is going to keep up with the demon chicken or demon bird status, because you definitely have a demon chicken as the boss here. And it just sort of swoops down, tries to attack you. Once again, a very telegraphed pattern. I figured out if you just sort of camp out in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, stand up and attack the chicken when he's coming at you, and then just simply duck down to appropriate times, you never have to leave that particular location, and you can have the boss taken out pretty much first try here. And then you journey into chapter 5, which I think there's only one level in chapter 5. And for this one, it's sort of a greatest hits of all the levels pushed together. You go back to the claustrophobic marketplace, you go back out across the castle walls, you journey through the inner castle. All the enemies are back, just simply in different locations. And sort of a greatest hits of all the levels. And you get to the final boss, who is Malkill. And once again, it's a very telegraphed boss fight. So once you try it a few times, you pretty much exactly learn the pattern he's going to go on, or which platforms you need to jump on when. He's really not too hard once you figure it out, but he's basically a giant Grim Reaper that shoots out a force lightning at you to try to kill you. Now, once you do take him out, you do get a little ending scene here saying that you have rescued the princess, you have defeated Malkill, and that's pretty much the ending of the game. There are no credits that roll after that. The game just simply starts back over at the beginning. But let's talk about the game as an overall here. Now, there are some aspects of the game that I do like. I like the music in the game. I like the animation in the game. I like the idea that there is some precision on your attacks. And I feel like if the game, I mentioned it earlier, just simply zoomed out your field of view and you could see which enemies are coming, you could time your movements a little bit better, and the game would be very much of a fair, enjoyable game. But they zoomed it in so much that you just simply cannot go through the game without pretty much memorizing every single level here and playing a memorized playthrough. I feel like most players, especially nowadays, are just simply going to give up on the game rather than take the time to actually memorize all the enemy placements and whatnot. And that's sort of a shame, because the game actually, it has some cool aesthetics in it. Like I mentioned, I don't hate the game. It's just simply, I just feel like they made a massive mistake in the design of it, which took away pretty much all the fun mechanics that they put into it. I'd say in the current state that it is in, and it will probably never change state, let's be honest, no one's going to go back and recreate the game. I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10, just simply because it is a nearly impossible game to get through. But if you do want to sort of suffer your way through it, I feel like there are some fun aspects. But if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above. You can go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.